Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm DJ Ross in Mountain View, California.
Each week on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. On this week's show, we're talking about Grounded, Paper Cut Mansion, and Sage Solitaire.
Ooh, all the hottest games this season.
Yes, yep. All the Fire Emblems and all the God of Wars and
Elden Ring. People still talking about Elden Ring. People still like that game.
Probably.
Yeah.
There was something I was reading that was like the most anticipated games of 2023, and I was like, "Oh, what comes out this year besides Zelda?" And it was something about Elden Ring DLC. I was like, "Oh, more Elden Ring!"
It's just endless.
All right, well. More Elden Ring for the Elden Ring people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you should give Elden Ring a try. Maybe you'd be into it.
Sure.
You like open world games that are several hundred hours long?
Yeah. I like getting brutally punished every time I take a step.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
I love that about a video game. Yeah. So,
what is the most difficult game that you've been able to put up with?
Death's Door. Death's Door's really hard.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're the little crow.
The little crow guy. I got that. I haven't started it yet.
Oh, excellent. Who's also a Grim Reaper. It's really hard. It's very combat driven too, so that requires some focus that I don't normally give video games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's I've heard that described as like kind of Dark Souls-like, so you're practically playing Elden Ring already.
Yeah. It's a little Soulsy, it's a little Zelda-y, it's kind of all of those things. I could see that, sure. Yeah, that game is brutal. Tunic is really brutal. I had a tough time with that. I didn't finish either of these games for the record, but I hung in there as long as I could. Mm-hmm. I was really enamored by other parts of those games. So I tried to put up with it as long as I could tolerate.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I played the first Uncharted in crushing difficulty all the way through.
No, you didn't.
I did. I have.
Even I didn't do that.
The little trophy to prove it on the PS3.
Wow. Well, I stand corrected.
Maybe that's my hardest video game thing. Because at that point, those villains are just sponges, just like full clips of ammo, and they're still standing. So, yeah, that game was nuts.
I have an Uncharted crushing story. I remember going back and playing that game on not crushing, but whatever was between normal and crushing. Crushing is the hardest difficulty in that game, just if you haven't played Uncharted. Which, I forget what it was called, just like hard mode, I guess. And it was really hard.
Yeah.
Shock. I mean, I know. And I got through it and was just not enjoying it at all at the end. To the extent where I took the game, took the disc out, because I was still, buying discs at that point. I put it back in the case, and I've left a little note in the case that said, "Do not play this on crushing ever," because that trophy was still just sitting there staring at me, the blank space where the virtual trophy would go.
Yeah.
And then I never played it on crushing because of my sage advice to myself.
Yeah, making the Uncharted games more difficult does not make them more fun.
No, it actually makes them significantly less fun.
It's a lot less fun, in fact. Yeah, absolutely. I had this fantasy that I was going to play the original Uncharted trilogy all the way through, all three games, on crushing difficulty before Uncharted 4 came out. And I got through the first one and went, well, that was a stupid idea. I'm not doing it. And good way
to just ruin your favorite series for yourself.
Exactly. And did not revisit Uncharted 2 or 3 during that playthrough cycle. Which is unfortunate because 2 and 3 are great games. I just would not go back to them on Crushing.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's the responsible thing.
Mm. I didn't leave a note to my future self in that situation. That's I appreciate your sort of like follow through on that. Your clear-sighted foresightedness.
I just knew that, like, maybe someday it'll get into my head, like, oh, why didn't I ever get that trophy? Today's the day. And then I would go and open it up and be like, oh, no, I was, should not do that.
That sounds like some like murder mystery memento kind of.
I know. It's like, just take off my shirt and it's like, don't play Uncharted on Crushing in the mirror.
Yeah, all your tattoos are backwards so you could read them in the mirror because you have no short-term memory.
It's like, what is that? It's like, is that the name of the man who killed your wife? It's like, no, it's just a reminder that I shouldn't play this video game.
Right, yeah.
Take video games very seriously.
Next to a tattoo that says, do not trust the man in the yellow hat. We're like, what? Is that who killed DJ?
Oh, no.
Good times.
Yeah. Anyway, so Elden Ring should be a walk in the park.
Yeah. I mean, I'm intrigued by it. Like anything that is sort of like takes over the collective consciousness of gamers for some period of time, I'm like, maybe I should try it. Maybe I would like that thing. And I've gotten better as I've gotten older, and my gaming time is much more limited of talking myself out of that instinct. It was real tough last week with Fire Emblem.
Bunch of games came out.
I like Fire Emblem games. Let's play the new. And I'm like, no, I didn't finish the last one. Certainly didn't finish the 2 before it. If I want to play Fire Emblem, I should go back and play some of the old Fire Emblem games that I have paid good money for.
Sure.
That, are sitting on shelves or taking up hard drive space. So yeah, I want to hang out with the cool kids. I want to talk about the Pokemans and the Elden Rings, and it's tough sometimes to just realize my limitation and know that look, you don't have time for that. You bounce off those games all the time. It's not going to happen. Just calm your shit, Randy.
Oh man. I used to be so good about, I had this policy. I would not buy a new game if I was still in the middle of whatever I was playing at the time. And I was actually really good about sticking to that for a couple years, and then I don't know what happened. But for the most part, yeah, I just try and avoid, like, oh, there's a new game that came out. Let me get through these 5,000 other games first.
Yeah, I've never had that policy, and I've never been good about trying to enforce that to myself. And I would say only over the last maybe 18 months have I been able to sort of take a breath before I click buy now or or whatever, curbside pickup at Best Buy and talk myself out of spending $60 on something that I know I don't have time for.
Yeah, just keep your wallet in the freezer or whatever, whatever people do.
Yeah, some of it is Sarah helps immensely. Sarah will be like, what is this package that just came from Amazon? I'm like, oh, that's another video game.
Like
she's like,
package shaming is
whenever
a new thing shows up.
A game 2 days ago from Amazon? Yes. And didn't you get a game from Limited Run 2 days prior to? Yes, I did. She's like, when are you going to play all these games? And then now I have to sort of play out the conversation in my head. If I order this, I will have to explain it to Sarah, and undoubtedly it will arrive at some inconvenient time where I've also spent, $150 on vinyl records that have landed in the same day, and et cetera, et cetera. And so it helps. It's a little, not nitpicking, just like an accountability person in my life, someone who can be responsible with my money.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's kind of just, negative reinforcement. But
there's no shaming. It's just perspective. That's all.
Maybe there should be. Maybe it should be like, how many games is this week? I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, it does sort of hinge on that sometimes. But then I feel like I have like an obligation to be sneaky about it. To like, well, if I buy digital games, she'll never know. Just download it.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like she's checking the hard drive or my purchase history on the Switch, or my emails for confirmation of purchases. So yeah. So yeah, you don't actually learn anything. You just learn how to be sneaky.
Yeah. Well, it's good that she's not illicitly reading your emails.
Yeah, or listening to this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, how you talk about a new game every week? Where are you getting these games?
Yes. Yeah. Ugh. It's all a ruse. I don't actually play all the games I talk about.
Oh. Well, jig is up. The gig is up. One of the two things.
About 10 minutes before we push record, I hop on Rotten Tomatoes, or no, that's movies. What's the one?
Read the eShop description.
Yeah, read the eShop description and then go through what's the freshness rating, Metacritic, and
that's Rotten Tomatoes, isn't it?
It's is that all the same thing?
Does everybody have freshness now?
Rotten Tomatoes is movies, but Metacritic also does video games, so that's what I was looking for.
Yeah,
and yeah, if the collective internet doesn't like it, I don't like it.
Sure, that's safe.
This, none of this is true. Please don't email me.
So, might not be entirely untrue.
It's mostly untrue.
Mostly untrue. Okay.
I want to take a few minutes at the top of the show here, if you'll indulge me, and ask if you've played. No, I know you've played The Last of Us, but have you watched The Last of Us TV show?
No, I have not. I don't currently have HBO. Plus, I'm just, I'm holding out for The Last of Us TV show remaster that's going to come out in 3 or 4 years, and I'll just watch that instead. It'll be better.
For the HBO Max Plus.
Yes. Yeah. For the HBO 5 or 6, maybe at that point.
It's really good. I went into it with a fair amount of skepticism, but some enthusiasm because I like the video games.
Sure, I hear it's good.
Yeah, we are 2 episodes in now, and I continue to be kind of blown away by just sort of the level of quality they've managed to achieve, given that it started with a video game.
Right.
Yeah.
I would probably be watching it if I had HBO right now, but
if you had the channel,
I rotate my streaming services. So right now I'm still making my way through every Star Trek series on Paramount or whatever it is. So I'll watch it eventually, I'm sure.
Good. See, rotating your subscription services, that is the mature adult thing to do.
Yeah, well, I just can't, there's no point in having all of them at once because I can't watch 5 shows simultaneously.
This is true.
As much as I would like to. As much as I would like to capriciously jump between Star Trek Lower Decks and The Last of Us and whatever new Marvel garbage is out at the moment.
Yeah. Marvel garbage.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah. I have this weird sort of thing where I'm like, what movie I haven't watched in a long time, and I need to have every movie in the known universe available at my disposal for those moments. We had one a couple weeks ago where I was like, I haven't seen The Burbs in a long time. Do you remember The Burbs, DJ?
The Burbs? I've never seen that.
Oh, it is. I think it's a late 80s, possibly early 90s comedy with Tom Hanks.
Yeah, I was like one of those oldish Tom Hanks movies.
Yeah. When Tom Hanks made comedies.
Yeah.
And it was funny. I remember thinking it was quite funny in my youth. And I'm like, I have to watch that movie. I wonder if it holds up. And it was this mad dash through all of my subscription services to see which one has The Burbs. So yeah, probably not the healthiest inclination in the world to have an entire universe of movies available at my disposal. But sometimes I get a little bee in my bonnet and I have to watch the Burbs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It does not hold up.
Sometimes you just gotta watch The Burbs. Oh, does not hold up. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah. But Last of Us TV show, really good. Sarah has not played the video game and is super hooked on the show with me. So I think it transcends that video game orbit and that, constantly sitting on the couch going, oh, there's that thing from that game. Oh, there's that character from that game.
Does she recognize characters on this?
No, that's me doing that and recognizing scenarios and situations and even lines of dialogue and stuff. They're pretty faithful. They've expanded the story pretty significantly, but there definitely are sort of nuggets of things that feel very familiar. But she has none of that. I actually got the discs out for Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2, and we're showing her, and she was looking at it and reading the back of the box and stuff like that after watching Episode 1 because she was kind of into it. And she's like, that was way better than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, she's going to play the game
She knew
now?
I was hyped for it and that it was the origin of it was a video game. I think she just sort of indulged my desire to watch it and found herself kind of pulled into it. So yeah, if you've not played The Last of Us and you're not sure if you'll dig it, You might dig it. I would encourage you to watch it. It's a good show.
What if you have the option of playing The Last of Us, but you haven't yet? Should you just watch the show instead?
I don't know how well one replaces the other. I don't know if I can even maybe weigh in on that until the last episode airs.
Until it's done, yeah.
Yeah. I think they're doing enough interesting and new in the show that it doesn't feel like I can sort of call everything that happens. Because that was my fear, is like, I know The Last of Us video game pretty well. And it wasn't that long ago that I played The Last of Us 2. So like, is this really just going to be like me, for 10 hours of my life going, oh, there's that, and there's that guy, and I knew that was coming. So it has not been that thus far. I think the creators have done a really good job, at least through the 2 episodes that have aired. I'm going to keep the spoiler free. Obviously, there have been segments in the beginning of each before the credit roll that expand the universe, that sort of go back in time, and you get a little more information or go to alternate locations. The games really just took place with Joel and Ellie and their sort of immediate situation, and they're using the cold open essentially on the Last of Us TV show to get little vignettes from other places and times as sort of like, I don't know, as the appetizer to kind of what's coming with Joel and Ellie.
So like before the outbreak or whatever.
Yeah, I won't say more, but yes, you're in the right track. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's good. It's not a distraction, but it's a good little flavor. And then they're over in 3 or 4 minutes. Like I said, it's just a little something before the credits, the opening credits. But it definitely feels like it makes it feel like a bigger story. And none of that stuff was in the game, so it's all new information, and it's kind of cool.
Interesting. And this is now all canon with the game now. So when you play The Last of Us 3, you have to have seen the TV show to understand all these references.
I don't know the answer to that either. I mean, Neil Druckmann from Naughty Dog, I believe, was the writer and the director of the video game, is the writer and the director of most of the episodes of the TV show. It's all his brain, so I suspect he's owning all of this stuff.
Don't forget Bruce Straley or whoever got cut out of the credits. You see what that was? What was going on with that?
Yeah, that's a tough situation.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah.
But
unions are good. Unions help people. I think I come down on the side of unions in that situation. I think there's definitely someone should have been protected in that process.
Yeah, seems kind of like a crappy situation.
Yeah.
But I didn't mean to,
no, that's fine.
Be down on it.
That problematic scenario notwithstanding, I quite like the Last of Us TV show.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering, I'm sure I'll see it eventually, but I was curious. I was like, what? Is there a point in me watching this if I've already played the game? It always feels like when they adapt something, whether it's a video game or like a comic book or whatever, to another medium, it's like, okay, so are we adding anything? Are we just making the Watchmen movie? What's going on? But it sounds like it, is more than just a 1-to-1 sort of dump of the game onto HBO.
Yeah. There are moments that feel like that, and it is kind of exciting to see it brought to life. It's HBO, so the scale of it, the set design, the costuming, the music, all of it is polished and expansive. It definitely has a Westworld or a Game of Thrones kind of scope to it that feels really massive. So it's cool to see that sort of rendered in quote unquote real life. But yeah, it's good. I think it definitely, whatever perspective you come to it from, being either a Last of Us video game fan or having no clue, and just maybe liking a good scary show with good characters, I think it kind of serves all of those masters.
I feel like I just have kind of this Last of Us fatigue, which is maybe why I'm not in a huge hurry to watch it.
Sure.
Which is also ridiculous because it's probably been 10 years since I played that game, but I just feel like I'm, inundated by Last of Us remasters and sequels and just buzz around this TV show. But
that's fair. I could see that.
Yeah, it's just weird how it feels unavoidable. Everybody just loves talking about that game.
I find with sort of video game to movies or TV show adaptations that I just mostly find myself angry about the things that they chose to change. and I wonder sometimes, do you have a sense of what made this video game good? and why it appeals to people. And that is not always clear when those things get turned into movies. It didn't feel clear in Uncharted. It didn't feel clear with Assassin's Creed. There's probably 50 other examples I could pull out of my brain. I think they get it with The Last of Us, I think, to a degree. And obviously having Neil Druckmann involved the whole way through probably keeps them on the path of righteousness to a certain degree as well. But they resisted the urge to turn it into The Walking Dead or turn it into 28 Days Later. It very much sort of like finds its own place in zombie lore, which is kind of fun. So that's it.
I'll let you know when I get around to it.
Yeah, this has been your paid advertisement for The Last of Us on HBO Max.
Oh,
hopefully the check clears. What are you playing, DJ? What games, real video games that have not been turned into movies, are you playing lately?
I've been playing Grounded, which is a 1 to 4 player survival adventure game for the Xbox whatever. I give it a 85.
Hey, how would you rate the graphics?
Oh man, that just reminded me of something.
Graphics are a 6 out of 10.
The graphics are actually really good.
Oh yeah,
and I will get to that. There's so many things to discuss about this game. This is the latest sort of in my and my friend's attempt to find a new Valheim. I talked a little bit about this on our Game of the Year show.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, as I was reading off the Metacritic description, it is a co-op survival / like base building adventure game. And what sets this apart most notably is that you are a bunch of teens who have somehow been miniaturized to. So it's like kind of a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids situation where you're just like very, very tiny and marooned in the backyard of this house for some reason. And you're kind of just dropped into it at the start of the game. Like you wake up and you're very tiny already and you don't really know what's going on. You have some inkling that there is like a mad scientist involved. Not actually sure how mad he is exactly, but just somebody who's doing some experiments and you appear to have been caught in some of the effects or something happened. And part of the game is just trying to unravel the mystery of it and presumably get yourself back up to a normal size. But along the way, you're having to scrounge for, you're just doing the typical survival stuff. You gather resources and build a shelter, and which you can develop into a big fancy house or a base with all these facilities and pieces of equipment, and fend off the local wildlife as you try and collect all these clues to what's going on with these science experiments. And like I said, I've been playing it with some friends. We will just jump in and, you can play up to 4 people kind of co-op. So we'll do a little bit of the Valheim thing where like people will gravitate towards specific sort of tasks that they like to do. Like some people will try and build up the house. Some people will go scouting for resources. Other people will try and track down the science labs or clues on how to access the science labs to unravel the mystery. But it's been interesting. Like aside from just being, or from just everybody playing a survival game, is also just another. That's kind of a nice excuse to just hang out on Discord and chat over the game. So that's fun.
Cool. It sounds like it's much more, and maybe I don't have a sense of this with Valheim, but it's a little more objective based. You started by sort of describing plot, and there's a mystery as to how you got miniaturized, and you have to solve it and stuff. And I don't remember you ever talking about sort of like what the goal of Valheim was, other than like building a bridge and going into the woods and fighting monsters and stuff like that.
Yeah, there was a central sort of path for you to follow in Valheim, but compared to this, compared to Grounded, it is so different. Like there's such a huge contrast there in terms of how much the game led you to the next objective. This really feels like the most sort of AAA game that I've played in a long time. Not just in terms of how sort of the story is presented to you, but it's very like high budget and everything is very shiny in it. It's developed by Obsidian, who made Knights of the Old Republic 2 and Fallout New Vegas. I kind of think of them as like the B team working with Bethesda, because like, or not, yeah, no, Bethesda, and to some extent BioWare, which like for the Knights of the Old Republic connection.
Yeah,
but they always felt like the team that would come in and make the sequel to some other game that existed. And the sequel, it would be generally pretty well regarded. In fact, I think a lot of the time people will say like, oh, I actually prefer Knights of the Old Republic 2 or New Vegas over Knights of the Old Republic 1 or Fallout 3, whatever the predecessor was.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, this is an established studio. It's not like Valheim, which is like 5 or 6 people putting this game together in their spare time. So it looks very nice. Like I said, or like you were asking, the graphics are very good. I feel like sometimes I just get tunnel vision because I spend so much time playing Final Fantasy XIV, which is like 10 years old and designed to run on a PS3. Whenever I play a more recent game, I'm just like, oh, wow, games look really good now. Like sometimes, like a lot of the scenery is not incredibly appealing to look at because you spend a lot of time just in these muddy tunnels in the backyard. So there's a lot of dirt and like rocks. But occasionally you'll sort of tilt the camera up to look up at the sky, and the way the like giant blades of grass sort of catch the sunlight and like become a little bit transparent and just reflect light in really amazing ways. Like, oh wow, this is really impressive looking. So very good.
Cool. Yeah. I've not played a ton of Obsidian games, but they've been on my brain recently because of Pentiment, which I really liked and played a ton of. And that was a little group of folks from the larger Obsidian team. Basically indulging a passion project.
I think they made one of those South Park RPGs that you played.
Yes.
I was surprised as I was looking through their sort of credits. Just remember that all these other games are on it.
The Outer Worlds is theirs too. I remember that.
Is it?
Having fun with that, yeah.
Okay. Outer Worlds, not Outer Wilds.
Correct.
That was more of the Fallout style game.
Right, yeah. They actually did both of the South Park games.
Okay.
Yeah, they did Alpha Protocol, which is a game I really like too. I don't know how well that's aged, but that was fun. So there's some pretty good stuff in their pedigree.
Yeah, we got quite the resume. Although weirdly, I think this is the first thing I played from them. I might have mentioned that already. But anyway, so it's been fun. It's been fun just sort of going through these familiar survival motions, like getting your supplies together and trying to build out the base. They've made a lot of really nice sort of like quality of life improvements to these familiar base building and survival systems, which I appreciate because one of my favorite things to do in this type of game is build up the sort of shelter or the headquarters, really. For instance, you and the entire group has come to appreciate this, I think, is once you've set up your storage containers, you can sort of just be standing near them and automatically deposit everything in your inventory into the appropriate container. And also when you then go to craft stuff, it will sort of like the crafting station will look into any of the nearby containers and use those resources for whatever you're trying to craft. So you don't actually have to have stuff on you.
That's awesome. That is a
really
much requested and desired feature for Animal Crossing. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen any other game do this. It could be there are other games that have already sort of got this implemented, but it's amazing. Even something like Valheim, which wasn't a terrible crafting system, there was still a lot of like running back and forth between chests and like where did I put that that log or whatever I needed to create this recipe.
Yeah, and you can only use a crafting ingredient if you have it on your person.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of other crafting streamlining stuff happening as well. But so that's very good. My favorite thing about this, though, is this blueprint system, which basically what it is whenever you want to build something, like whenever you want to construct something, like whether it's part of your base, like in a wall or a floor or something, or a new piece of equipment, you bring up the crafting menu and you select whatever you want to build, and then you sort of put down a blueprint of it, kind of like this glowing silhouette of whatever it is. And then you just place that in the environment, and it becomes kind of this placeholder for whatever the object is. And then once you highlight that, you can select, or you can select to just like contribute whatever resources you have available towards it. And then once enough has been contributed, it's completed. So it's like actually built. But because of this, you can just sort of blueprint out your entire base and all the facilities you need, and then go collect the materials for it. And plus, anybody can contribute to any of these blueprints. So whatever they're carrying, they just add on whenever it's convenient for them.
That's pretty cool.
Which is great, because you just like build out the whole thing. I mean, it's just like having actual blueprints or like a plan of whatever you want to build. And you run into a lot fewer situations where, you know, in other games you might place down a wall and realize like, oh, that's not exactly how I wanted it. So now I have to like scrap it, and I've wasted all the resources I spent so far just building in this direction. And that's not really a problem with this anymore because of this amazing sort of blueprinting happening.
Nice. And you have access to all the blueprints from the jump, or do you have to collect those and unlock those as you progress?
Well, you unlock more recipes as you get farther into the game, but I think you basically you start unlocking stuff fairly quickly. Like as soon as you what you have to do is you take resources to this little science station, which has also been miniaturized in the yard somehow. And then you put it through this analyzer, and that will spit out a bunch of new recipes for you to work with.
Yeah.
And then as you progress, you unlock more and more of the tech tree, so you can build fancier stuff. Like I think we just unlocked sort of a cooking station, so we can hopefully cook fancier food for us. And then I think better tools are on the horizon as well.
Nice.
So that's fun. And the sort of survival, like combat stuff has been fairly standard. I think that I'm having, like, where I'm struggling the most with this is we're playing it on the normal settings. So like normal or like default survival and like combat and everything. And it's a little like difficult. It feels like the combat, unless everybody, I mean, we're having a hard time getting geared up as well. But I mean, all of these are sort of like separate problems that compound onto each other, where in order to have good equipment, we have to go out and fight these enemies that are just like a little too difficult to fight with our current level of gear. But we really need to do that in order to upgrade everything. We're also like, we're just constantly dealing with like all our characters are very hungry or thirsty, and in Grounded, if your thirst or hunger meter completely deplete, then you just like die and respawn back at your base. You have to go collect your backpack full of stuff. And it just feels like I feel like I'm just getting slowly worn down by all of these systems just being a little bit too oppressive. It's not quite like I don't know if you played Don't Starve.
Yeah, I played not a ton, but enough of it to understand the reference. Yeah,
where I mean, it's difficult to survive in that game because that's sort of the whole premise of it.
Because you might starve.
Like, yeah. But that's something I really enjoyed about Valheim is that while you had sort of a hunger meter and occasionally you had to eat to replenish your stamina or give yourself a health boost or something, there would not be any consequences if like you just didn't eat for a long time. You wouldn't pass out or anything.
Oh, really?
At least that's how I remember it. Yeah, you would just be very sort of like fragile. If you happen to run into a troll in the woods or something, it might be a bad situation if you hadn't eaten in a while. But in this one, I can't tell if it's because we're still sort of early in the tech tree and we just don't have the sort of infrastructure to provide like water and food reliably. It just feels like I'm constantly worrying about where I'm going to get food from or where I'm going to find some water to drink, which is kind of a bummer because I want to be building up the house or whatever. I want to be trying to track down the next science lab and not sort of like chasing down grubs or weevils or something so I can attack them or kill them and like turn them into food or something like that.
Sure. Is that not the balance of it? Is that maybe you're spending too much time doing crafting and building and etc. And maybe you should be, I don't know, a little more planful about sort of division of responsibility and time?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to. I'm trying to just have a stock of food saved up and ready to go, but it's like it feels so hard to maintain at this point.
Oh.
And part of that is because your supplies spoil after long enough. It kind of happens twofold. Like you will go out and kill some bug, and you'll end up with like this piece of raw bug meat, which immediately starts ticking down. So I don't know exactly how long it takes, but eventually it just turns into like spoiled meat and it's useless.
Gross.
And yeah, it's pretty gross. So then you can cook it and turn it into a meal, but then that also has an expiration. So it's not like you can just stockpile all of this stuff like we would in Valheim and just be like, oh, you need food? We have a whole chest full of food you can just take and it'll be available. It's like, okay, so we have food for the next like 24 in-game hours.
Yeah.
And then we have to go through this whole cycle again.
So it's a game where everything feels urgent and there's not enough time to do any of it.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm always sort of worrying about this, which is not something I really like to do. I like the fact that it's present, that it is a concern, but it's just like, it's like the weapon degradation in Breath of the Wild. It's like, it's an interesting system, but you just had to think about it so much in that game.
Yeah, this is true.
Or at least that was my experience.
Are these not modifiable, customizable?
You can tweak the settings quite a bit, but I think when it comes to stuff like the hunger and thirst, and there's also equipment degradation in this, which is a nightmare.
Oh, geez.
It's either like on or off, or I think there's a third setting, which is like even more difficult if you're into like the extreme stuff. But it's like, no, that's definitely not what I want.
If you don't eat every 30 seconds, you die.
Yeah. So I don't know. It could just be that we haven't found out how to make the ideal food that's like shelf stable, and we can just stockpile. And we haven't found a good way to just consistently collect dew, which is like, like dew starts to collect on the grass in the evening, and then it's there in the morning, and that's one of the primary sources of like water.
Oh.
Which is fun because you'll see a huge dewdrop hanging off a blade of grass, and you have to go kind of kick the blade of grass or something to knock it loose. You can catch it in your thermos or whatever, or your canteen. But that brings me to another issue I have with this game, is that it is so glitchy. A lot of the time, actually, I think most of the time, you'll go to knock a dewdrop off a blade of grass, and it will just not become like dislodged. It will just stay there. Sometimes you can cut down the entire stalk of grass and the dewdrop will just be floating in midair, like, oh, well, that's probably not supposed to happen.
Oh.
And we'll run into other stuff like this. Like, just the other day, we were trying to gather some new resource, which was fairly uncommon, and we found it. And I wasn't actually gathering this, so I'm just reporting back secondhand. But my friend was like, oh, we found like the bone we needed or whatever to make this other thing. And we're like, great, let's bring it back. And he'd be like, okay, well, I can't collect it because it's somehow stuck in this wall. It's like glitched into the wall somehow.
Ugh.
So we just run into stuff like that frequently.
And it's not early access anymore. It was for a long time,
asking,
right?
I was like, is this still early access? Like, why is all this stuff happening? Like, no, it's actually out. It's actually released. This is the 1.0 or like 1.x version.
Ooh.
So that's a little frustrating. I feel like at least fix the dewdrop thing. That seems pretty major. Like, that's a serious problem. So that's what makes me wonder, are there just alternatives? Are there better things that we could be pursuing with these dewdrops that get stuck on the grass? And, are there better foods we could be making? Maybe we just haven't discovered the methods yet. But it's like, as much fun as I'm having with the exploration and sort of base building stuff, it's just slowly chipping away at me, just having to manage these hunger meters the entire time.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a bummer.
Yeah, it's part of the reason why I haven't been able to latch on to a bunch of these other survival games that are out there. Or when it comes down to it, I'll often just turn that whole system off if it's an option. But like, I don't want to have to do that. I want to, it's interesting if that system is in the game. Like, like it's cool if I have to eat occasionally. Just I don't want to be consumed with that all the time.
You need a little balance.
Yeah. So I'm really hoping, like, I'm enjoying the rest of the game. So I hope it's just a matter of a few more hours before we discover like the ultimate like bug jerky, I think is recommended. Like let you get a jerky drying rack or whatever. We could have some food that doesn't spoil quite as quickly.
A little
Maybe,
dehydrator.
a little tiny dehydrator. These are all just sort of unanswered questions I have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like the base building stuff. I wish
Cool.
every game had the blueprint system because that's super cool.
And it sounds clever, yeah.
Yeah, I hope more games sort of take note of it and incorporate that as these new survival games come out.
I remember No Man's Sky added something in one of their many updates that if you had like a recipe for a thing you wanted to construct or build, you could kind of flag it in your menu. And as you were out exploring and collecting resources, it would remind you, hey, don't forget you need, 6 carbon and 52 boron and whatever. And as you start picking up things, it would say, oh, hey, you're almost there. You have almost have enough pieces to build this thing that you flagged.
Yeah.
So I liked that because I would find myself sometimes like, in some of these games getting out in the world going, how many carbon did I need? And No Man's Sky made it much easier to like keep track of those goals and stuff like that. So this thing you're describing in Grounded feels like kind of a natural kind of progression and evolution of that idea.
Yeah, that would be really good. I don't know if this has that checklist. It may very well have it, but another component of just this being an enormous feeling game is that the menus are just labyrinthine. And it's just so complicated. There's so much stuff on screen in any of the menus. It's quite overwhelming. And this is from somebody, like, I've played my share of complex video games. There's a lot going on in the menus in this game. It's not quite Death Stranding, but it's getting up there. So, like, lots of good ideas in this. Some stuff that maybe they could fix with a patch or two or some slight balance adjustments.
Yeah.
But it's been a sort of a nice sort of Valheim-like, good to get the crew together, build a new house out of blades of grass.
Cool. And it's scratching your itch for that sort of social hangout time with buddies, right?
Yeah. Can't complain about that aspect of it.
Right.
But I wish it was like, I feel like a lot of the time we're on voice, I'm just complaining about something not working correctly in the game.
I'm starving again.
Yeah.
Great.
Also, one kind of unexpected component of this is that it's kind of just gross all the time. Because every enemy you encounter in this is some kind of like disgusting giant bug. Whether it's like an ant or like a little weevil just kind of crawling around. Like I said, you like kill them and then they drop the big like weevil steaks, which look disgusting. And then you just realize like, oh, so I'm just holding a big chunk of a bug that to me is the size of a basketball. That's kind of disgusting. I don't have a huge problem with bugs or anything, but it's just like, oh, like it's just like constantly getting attacked by bugs and their spindly legs and antenna and everything. It's a little gross.
What was that game that you and I co-op that was the parents got shrunk down and turned into toys and everything was much bigger than...
It Takes Two.
It Takes Two. Yeah.
Not nearly as gross, that game. There's a lot of stuffed animals and toys, like you were saying.
Yeah.
But since you're just in the backyard in this, it's just a lot of insects and things.
Yeah. What a fun concept, though. That was a game I played last year, Tinykin. Where it was basically kind of a Pikmin-like, where you had a bunch of little drones kind of following you around, but you were teeny tiny, you were diminutive as well, and it was, this interesting perspective on a house of massive furniture and how you would, climb up on a table and things like that, and it was cool. It was a lot of fun. I dig that perspective.
Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely not an incredibly common sort of setting in a game.
Right.
Although I just find myself thinking like, oh, can we just go inside somewhere? Like can we be indoors for a while? Get away from all these bugs.
Live in the dirt. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the game with the spider slider thing where if you're arachnophobic, you can turn down how spidery the spiders look in this.
Oh, really?
Did you see this?
No.
It starts out with, the spiders just look like giant spiders or whatever. And then you turn on the slider and gradually you slide it down away from the spider end of the spectrum. And I forget what the intermediate stages look like. I guess they start losing their legs. They just don't have as many legs, or they don't have as many eyes or whatever. But if you turn it all the way down, the spiders just turn into like these weird sort of like orbs, like to the point where they don't look anything like spiders anymore. But kind of to a detriment because they don't look like anything. So I'll be wandering around and just be like, "What is that thing? Oh, it's a spider, or like
it should be
it's
a
supposed
spider,
to be a spider, but it just looks like a little like PlayStation 1 sphere floating in the air with a couple of eyes. It's very weird. It's very weird.
When accessibility features go too far.
Yeah, I'm just like, maybe I should turn the slider back up. I'm not particularly arachnophobic, but I just wanted to be like, I wanted to make use of this thing. I wanted to have the weird spiders in my grounded experience.
Well, now you could say you did it, so.
But yeah, it's just really weird. It just looks like sometimes you get ambushed by a lemon or something.
Good times.
So anyway, I'm like, I'll probably stick to playing this for a little while longer before I get completely frustrated by it. Hopefully I feel like I'm just on the verge of getting better equipment and facilities in the base. So hopefully that will help things.
Cool.
Maybe they will fix that dewdrop bug at some point.
This is on Xbox Game Pass. I was in there this weekend hunting for something to play, and it popped up, and I knew that you had been spending a little time with it recently.
Yeah.
So for our listeners who may be interested and you have Game Pass, check it out on your Xbox.
Yeah, maybe you should check it out. I don't know if you'd be interested in this sort of thing. I'm actually considering starting a second game that I would just play solo or maybe with a different group of people with all of the stuff that is frustrating me turned off. So like maybe a purely creative mode. Maybe I would just build a house or something and not focus on the central storyline.
Yeah. I've not played a lot of these kind of survival sims. I've had some time with Don't Starve. I really like the artwork and the just sort of the oddball perspective of Don't Starve, but it is a very difficult game to love, I think.
Yeah, Don't Starve was too much for me.
It's quite punishing. And there was a series of games on the DS called Lost in Blue. There was, I think there was a first and a second one, and you were a survivor on a desert island kind of scenario. And that also had very sort of oppressive like hunger meters and stuff like that. And you couldn't get too far without, doubling over in hunger pains or dying from thirst. And again, cool concept. They just felt very punishing.
Yeah. It's actually quite difficult to find a good balance where it's an interesting resource you have to manage without it just ruining the entire experience.
Right.
So to me, Valheim is still the gold standard. I don't know how they did it, but just every game should be like that.
Cool. Are they making more of Valheim? I think I had heard something recently about
DLC,
right?
They continue to release updates for it. I don't know if any of them have been sort of like packaged as separate DLC or whatever. And my friends have talked about, maybe after they've released a few more of these updates, we'll go back and check it out again just so we don't blow through everything in a month.
Right.
But yeah, I would love to go back. Exactly. Yeah. Need my next hit.
Cool. I have I've been sort of, I don't know if obsessed is the right word. I've been quite fixated on this little mobile game that I want to call out called Sage Solitaire. This is on Android. I've been playing it on my Pixel. It's also in iOS. It's essentially a solitaire game, but you are making poker hands instead of just playing your conventional ace through king solitaire. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but so you have 9 stacks of
solitaire poker.
Yeah, solitaire poker. So you have 9 stacks of cards in front of you, and you're looking for 2 pair. You're looking for 3 of a kind. You're looking for straights and flushes and things like that, and you're building them from the cards that you have visible to you. And every time you clear a card, you can turn over the one under it, and it opens up more options for you to make poker hands, essentially. So you're playing poker against.
I see. So it's not like
yourself.
It's not like video poker. There is you're taking cards off a deck or something like you would in Klondike.
Right. So you have a layout that looks similar to the way that you would play solitaire with a bunch of decks of cards with all of them face down except for the one on top facing up. And as you clear the one on top, you can flip the next one, et cetera, et cetera. And instead of doing the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that you would do in solitaire, you're trying to look for pairs and straights and flushes.
Okay, I got it. So the ultimate goal is to like clear away the whole deck.
Correct.
Is that right? Got it.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, and there's some series of achievements and unlocks built into the game that come with clearing the entire screen. There's point values that are tied to each of the types of hands that you can identify and play. And you're going for high scores and high score challenges. There's a leaderboard tied to Google Play Games and stuff like that. So it does some of the, the social engineering, score attack kind of stuff pretty shrewdly behind the scenes. But more than anything, you're really just playing kind of a fun, challenging, solitary experience that, is flexing, your understanding of solitaire with your ability to memorize poker hands and identify them on the screen and presented in a way that doesn't feel like a traditional game of video poker.
Is it reasonable to clear out an entire deck using just poker hands? Like, does that sort of mathematically work out? I guess that's part of the challenge.
Yes, yeah. It's quite rare. I'll be honest. I've played probably hundreds of games of Sage Solitaire at this point. I discovered it over the holiday season, and I was sick from Christmas to New Year's and sick in bed for Christmas to New Year's, and occasionally played some Pentiment on my Steam Deck. And then for the rest of the time that I was just sitting in bed watching Netflix, I would play Sage Solitaire over and over and over again. And I did not have a lot of total clears. So they're rare. And when you get close, you get super excited, and when it happens, it's definitely kind of a fist pump, yes, out loud kind of scenario. So yeah, you do feel like you deserve it and you earned it to a certain degree. So yeah, I find sometimes that like I'll see plays or hands that I missed after I've already made my choice. There's no undo button, so you're committed. So you find yourself sort of belaboring over the choices that you make. And do I take the easy two pair, or oh wait, there's a flush here that I completely missed, et cetera, et cetera. So you're looking for opportunities, and there's strategies too. Is that some of the decks, the stacks of cards in front of you have only 3 or 4 cards underneath them, but some of them have like 10 or 12 cards underneath. So you want to like diminish those stacks as quickly as possible. So there's some strategy of sort of like trying to channel your plays into the deeper piles of cards. So yeah, I've put a lot of thought into how to best like min-max Sage Solitaire. It's super fun. I've had a good time with it. There are some ads in it, but if you give the developers $5, it turns off all of that stuff and unlocks a fun
that's good.
Little suite of customization things where you can change the design on the backs of the cards. You can change the background of the play field and stuff like that. So give them $5. It's totally worth it. It's a really beautiful kind of minimalist game that, you don't have to log into Facebook or anything crazy like that with it. It just plays a fun poker solitaire hybrid that I've had a really good time with.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
So if you need a mobile distraction, this is called Sage Solitaire. Clearly would recommend it.
Well, can't hurt to try it out. I'm like, do I need mobile games in my life? I've just been playing the Hatsune Miku game forever at this point. It's like, maybe
I feel like I usually have like 1 or 2 kind of on the burner for like, I don't know, standing in line, waiting for things, or on a conference call and I'm waiting for people to get their shit together and I'll play a little hand of Sage Solitaire. So little things like that. It's nice to have a little like distraction toy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to play Hatsune Miku on a conference call. Everybody just complains like, who's that singing in the background? What are you doing?
You hear the music, right? Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. So Sage Solitaire, pretty discreet. I'm probably going to... certainly more discreet than Hatsune Miku.
Top 10 games to play on a conference call. It will never be detected.
The other game I want to talk about this week is Paper Cut Mansion. This is I'll say that the developer provided a free copy of this for me to play and review. So big thanks to the folks at Thunderful for sending along that code. All of that said, I do wish I liked this game more.
Oh no, I was one of these.
It's tough. Yeah, it's so the hook here is that you're a police detective trapped inside of a spooky old mansion. The mansion in the game is procedurally generated, so it's different every time you sort of do a run. And I say run because it is a roguelite. You will die probably quite a bit. And every time you come back, the layout and the floor plan of the mansion is different. You're trying to solve a murder, and there's a number of mysteries you're trying to solve along the way that require you going from room to room, talking to different characters, piecing together clues, and sort of like running errands for people. You'll meet a couple who will give you information if you can find this thing that was stolen from us. And you'll have to like find it hidden someplace else in the mansion and bring it back to them. So there's a little bit of like, where did I see that thing that they said they had stolen? And then once you find it, where was that couple again? And trying to remember where in the mansion. This is compounded by the fact that the mansion exists in, I think, 4 parallel universes.
Oh, okay.
And you will find doorways between each universe. And you can go, once you find the door, you can go back and forth as you choose. Each universe has its own hook. One version of the mansion is all combat based. And you will find some weapons, hopefully, if you're lucky. And you'll just have a series of like zombie type creatures who are sort of shambling towards you that you're trying to take down. Some of it is sort of murder mystery that you're trying to solve. One of them is it has survival elements to it where you have to kind of keep yourself alive. And there are clues buried in each sort of instance of the mansion that you have to like resolve and take back to other instances to sort of satisfy the criteria of those objectives. And then try to stay alive, because if you die, it just resets back to 0 and you have to do it all over again.
Mm-hmm. Everything resets? There's no sort of like meta progression or anything?
You have some collectible cards that you can find. Everything in the game you can pick up and rotate and spin, and sometimes there are like little playing cards tucked into things underneath the grandfather clock, and those will have like armor increases, or health increases and things like that, that you can take from instance to instance of the game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to talk about with Paper Cut Mansion is that the entire thing is presented in papercraft. So it has a very cool, really unique look to it. Not like Paper Mario, because that's kind of the first thing my brain went to. It's more like Tearaway, if that means anything to anybody. That is a Vita game that I think eventually became a PS4 game. It's all made out of like construction paper and cardboard and origami in a lot of ways. Everything's very angular and severe looking.
Yeah. I was looking up screens of this before we started recording, and yeah, it looks really cool. Everything is kind of like a little paper model. Man, remember when people were really into papercraft for a while? I kind of forgotten that even existed.
Like in the real world papercraft, or video games that look like papercraft?
It's like for some reason, like, why do I know what papercraft is? It's because it was just a thing for a while in the real world. We were all
very bored during the pandemic. And
no, this was years ago. It was before Tearaway, but
gotcha.
People were just making little, I don't even remember what people were making, but just stuff out of paper, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I do remember that. I remember a Halloween when there were a lot of like papercraft masks, like a kit that you could buy off the internet and stuff like that. So yeah, that was a thing.
Yeah, but it is, anyway, this looks very cool. It's not a lot of games kind of use this aesthetic.
Yeah, it does feel very very thought out, very labored over. All of your on screen, your HUD have different affectations of sort of found things. So at the top left hand corner, you have like a little health meter and some of your power ups, and it's a weird little like papercraft dog kind of hanging from the ceiling holding up a sign with your health on it. And at the bottom, there's like broken typewriter keys that have all your little power-ups and stuff like that. So all of this feels very like bespoke and kind of crafted in a way that's super unique.
Very DIY.
Yeah. Everything, all the characters in it, little papercraft characters that you encounter, are like kind of hunched over and twisted and angular, and there's a horror element to it that feels very deliberate. Yeah, it's cool. It is a very cool game to look at. It looks good on the Switch. I've watched some footage of it on PC and PlayStation. It looks amazing. So I would encourage folks, like the visual acuity of it is a little lost on the tiny Switch screen. Maybe play it docked or play it on a bigger console, because you lose some of the effect of it. Everything just feels kind of cramped and busy on the Switch screen. So all of that said, it's okay. It's a fine game. It feels like a lot of the stuff is really like padded. You do a lot of fetching. There's a lot of reused assets. So
Hmm.
while everything is very cool looking, you go into the 15th version of a kitchen that has the same 5 tables in it, and et cetera, et cetera. And it all starts to feel very samey after you go through a couple of plays. It is a little punishing.
Is it the same kitchen across multiple playthroughs, or like you go into similar kitchens multiple times in one playthrough?
Because it's sort of both. Because you're doing a lot of fetching and running around, so you go backtrack through the same kitchen over and over, and because it looks like you've been there before, but you don't want to miss an opportunity to like search things, you end up picking up stuff and flipping it over and looking around to see if have I been here before? Did I unlock this stuff? Because it looks like the room that I was in a few minutes ago.
Oh, okay. So not actually the same like instance of the kitchen, just another similar looking one.
Right. Plus, you'll do repeat plays throughs of it, and because it's procedurally generated, it's just sort of remixing all of these assets.
Got it.
So
got it.
you'll go into a different version of the kitchen that has a table in a slightly different place, but it's the same table that was in the previous one, and the grandfather clock that it feels like is in every single room in this game, and et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't feel like there's enough assets created to warrant it being procedurally generated. I feel like it would be a stronger game if they had just, okay, the developers had said, this mystery mansion, paper cut mansion, has 10 floors to it, and each floor has 4 versions of it in the universe, and you're going to sort of make your way through all of them, and the goal is to get to the penthouse or something like that. And instead it sort of turns into this sort of like this grind of you just like lather, rinse, repeating all of these playthroughs, and they mix it up every single time, but it's not mixed up enough that it feels super unique or interesting. It just feels like they sort of move some of the furniture around a little bit.
Hmm.
So I don't feel like maybe enough work was done to justify the need for it to be procedurally generated. I think this could be, and this is not me being resentful of it being a roguelite, because I sort of get the motivation for that, but if this was a little more linear, if it had sort of a more what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, a linear sort of pathway through the mansion where you're ascending or descending floors, I think it would feel a little more fresh every time you got to a new floor, or a new series of rooms, rather than it just sort of feeling like the same stuff kind of remixed over and over and over again.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So after
I think I played some games which, for whatever reason, they ended up going more the like procedural route rather than having a bespoke campaign or whatever.
Mhm.
And you sometimes you get the sense that like, oh, that's just because like it's for development reasons or for cost reasons or whatever.
Yeah.
Interesting though.
Maybe that's my perspective, is that, I think Paper Cut Mansion could benefit from a campaign.
Or what if they just like went way more in the roguelite direction to the point where they sort of justified the current state of it?
Yeah, yes. Or that's, I guess the other end of it is just blow it up, make it bigger, give it a lot more assets and different variety in the rooms, and a larger cast of characters for you to interact with, and instead of sort of keeping all of those things relatively small and just sort of remixing them slightly between playthroughs. I think it suffers from sort of a lack of freshness over time. That I started this game real hot, going, this looks super cool, this is kind of fun, I like the vibe, I think I like the creepy characters, and I like the exploration, and then you die and then sort of do it again and again and again, and it just all sort of feels like you're gathering sort of a cumulative knowledge of the game and where to go, but you don't always feel like you're progressing, like you're not learning enough, you're not seeing enough, there's not enough variety between those attempts to play it to sort of justify the game committing to this structure. It just starts to feel a little repetitive in a way that I know like good roguelites are meant, or roguelikes are meant to sort of like inspire you to like, let's try again and I can do it this time.
You're not getting any of that. There's no sense that you're like becoming more capable or anything.
No, it feels a little bit like a slog, unfortunately.
Oh, that's too bad.
And maybe I just don't have roguelike brain. Like maybe, if you're super into games that are built this way, maybe Paper Cut Mansion is the thing for you. I came to this because of the really cool art style. And unfortunately, I didn't find the gameplay satisfying enough to kind of want to hang with it for, a dozen hours.
Yeah, so part of my brain has been thinking this whole time, like, maybe you just haven't played enough of this. Maybe it just hasn't like saturated your brain yet to the point where you're just like in the zone or whatever.
That's distinctly possible. I don't have a great track record of playing roguelikes or roguelites.
Yeah, I mean, it could be it's just not your thing. I know you're not into like Spelunky or I forget whatever the ones you've attempted are.
Yeah. Spelunky.
Spelunky, yeah. Most of that game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't pull another one out of my brain. So that, yeah, pretty limited. So this is called Paper Cut Mansion.
Thing.
Yeah, and maybe not my thing, but certainly a very cool looking game. It's undoubtedly somebody's thing. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have played it. I just wish I liked it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I played it on the Switch. I know it's on other consoles and PC as well. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, check it out.
Cool.
Certainly watch video of it in action because it's a very cool, really unique looking game. At the very least, really look up YouTube videos or Twitch streamers that are playing Paper Cut Mansion because it's really no other indie game looks like this.
Yeah.
And that about does it.
Wow, that was quite a breadth of games this week.
I know we talked about all the games this week.
Yeah, we got some of The Last of Us in there. It's good that we could shed some light on that struggling title.
They need all the help they can get. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. We would love for you to hang out with us on Discord, chat about games and movies and pop culture and other fun stuff. You can get a link to that at VGHangover.com. And we would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, anywhere else you can get a podcast. Just hit the subscribe button and then maybe help us out by telling your friends about the show.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Helps us get the word out, bring in new listeners, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Always nice. We want to give thanks again to Keiichi Okabe and Michiko Naruke this week for our intro and outro music. Thank you very much. Those are selections from FM Sound Module Maniacs. Hope you enjoy.
Yeah. We'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks so much for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.